have a wild thought. What if your relationship with money was trying to teach you something deeper about yourself? What if every financial pattern, from overspending to under-earning, from hoarding to impulse-splurging, was actually a mirror reflecting back your deepest fears and beliefs? I've been fascinated by this mirror lately, especially as I look at my own bizarre relationship with wealth. I've always known how to make money. It's like this innate superpower that I've had since childhood. At 13, when other kids were sleeping in, I was up before dawn delivering newspapers with the determination of a tiny CEO. I ran lemonade stands, I organized neighborhood talent shows with paid tickets, I went door to door selling cookie dough like it was liquid gold. Hell, in college, I even had a 2-month stint as a phone sex operator. Yeah, I'm still busting out surprises almost 500 episodes in. And yeah, I know you want details on that one, so DM me on Instagram and I'll treat it like an AMA. But here's where the mirror gets interesting. Making money was never my problem, but keeping it was. The moment my bank account would hit a certain number, my brain would shift into panic mode. It was like this primal alarm system that would start blaring. Don't lose it, don't lose it, don't lose it. And you know what happens when you're constantly bracing for loss? You create it. So this pattern isn't just about money. It shows up everywhere. Maybe you keep attracting the same types of toxic relationships. Maybe you sabotage opportunities right when things start going well. Maybe you can't let yourself enjoy success without waiting for the other shoe to drop. These patterns are trying to show us something about ourselves, if we're brave enough to look. Think about it. We've all met people who make 6 figures but live in constant scarcity. Or people who achieve their financial goals but still feel empty. People who keep making money but never really feel secure. And meanwhile, there are others who seem to just radiate abundance with far less in their bank accounts. So what's the difference? What I'm learning is that wealth isn't just about numbers in a bank account. It's about our relationship with abundance itself. And just like any relationship, it's complex and emotional and deeply revealing of our core beliefs about what we think we deserve. So our guest today is Elizabeth Husserl, a financial advisor who brings a refreshingly holistic approach to wealth. She's the author of a groundbreaking book that explores the psychology of money and teaches us how to transform our relationship with abundance from the inside out. So in this episode, you will learn why money acts as one of our greatest spiritual teachers, if we're willing to listen. How to decode the messages in your financial patterns and transform them from the inside out. And the surprising truth about wealth that has nothing to do with how much money you have. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything, work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out, but that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
Money is a huge mirror, right? It's a huge mirror into our relationship styles. And so in the book, I give you some practical examples on how to sit down and have a conversation with money to see what's really at the root of your relationship with it and what's it trying to mirror back in terms of how you are in relationship. Are you avoidant? Are you obsessive? Are you insecure? Insecure attachment, secure attachment. It helps you just see that. So it's a guide and a mirror. It can be a guide to helping us understand what our purpose is, what we came here to do, what feels in alignment with our values. The way we are in relationship and use it just gives us so much information every day.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So what inspired you to start understanding wealth in a new way?
Oh my gosh, I've been on this journey for 2 decades. I would say it's twofold. On one hand, I love math, which sometimes people are like, really? I love math and I love psychology. Those have been my 2 passions in life: psychology, spirituality, math, and economics. And I always wanted to solve problems, but I was captivated by humans. And I was like, what are some of the problems that I'm seeing people around me have? And then when I started digging into my own history, I was like, interesting. Why is there a feeling of scarcity in the collective world that I'm in or my family when that's not the reality that's matching what I'm living? That wasn't matching my reality. And so that's when I started to dive in and ask these questions that our reality can be different than our experience of it. And so that was kind of my doorway into what is this thing about money? What is this thing around wealth? How do I help people make better decisions? And I had to start by understanding it in me first.
Most of us grew up thinking that more money equals more happiness.
Yeah.
What was the pivotal moment when you realized that that wasn't really the whole story?
I would say there's a couple pivotal moments. I'm trying to think I have so many examples, Melissa. And so I'm trying to get really specific on a couple. So on one hand, I'm super grateful that my parents taught me money management. And by that, I mean, they taught, my mom's to this day still kind of manages a checkbook. She taught me how to use one. They taught me how to budget. They taught me how to work for my allowance. So I feel like I had good financial hygiene, which I know not everyone had growing up. But I also felt, and I knew, my dad was a doctor. He earned money. My mom was a therapist. They were both working professionals. We had what we needed. I never lacked material things, but there was still emotional tension. And, and it wasn't, my parents are today still married 50 years in. And I think it was just the natural tension of marriage and life and adulting and being financial, just being mature adults. And it didn't matter if we had more money, that tension didn't go away. And so I started to ask myself, why is it that we're scapegoating more money to solve things that a lot of times are relational or our experience of it? So, I just, again, started digging into where were some of the threads of unhappiness in my family's life, in my own life, between my parents and in their own journey. So I just started digging and realizing it's not as it's not as easy to interpret as what's at the surface. We have to do a little more digging. And it's not just money, but there's so many ways that we use things in our lives to not feel, right? And I think one of the things that I love about your podcast is you're asking us to use our mind, to feel deeply in our hearts, but to use all of our experiences to get to the core of what's really happening.
Yeah. I remember this specific moment when I was working for my old company. I was in my 20s. I had around like $10,000, well, probably like $15,000 worth of debt that just felt so overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
Now looking back, just with different things and business debt and whatever, I'm like, that was nothing. But but I just remember feeling like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And then there's this going on. And I just remember at the time my boss was like this sort of new millionaire, and he was like flaunting his money, and like I would party with him and we'd go to clubs, and he would like drop like $5,000 on a table, and he wasted $20,000 on something else. And I just remember thinking over and over again, because I feel like this is what I used to do when I was younger. If this person would only give this to me, then I would be good.
Yeah.
If, man, that he wasted 20 grand on that. He could have given that to me. It completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And then there was like later on in my life, I got 20 grand for something. I did pay off those random debts, but none of my problems felt like they were gone.
Yeah.
At all.
100%. Yeah.
And there's something to be said, of course, like it's difficult when you're struggling with money. It just feels like that is the big problem, especially if it's like paycheck to paycheck, wondering how you're going to pay for things. But I just find it funny that even though, yes, of course, it would be helpful to not stress about that all the time, almost everybody who has experienced getting rid of that doesn't feel like their problems are gone. It's a new problem. And so if you don't really find that serenity or your own abundance or your own sense of security, you're gonna find ways to just sort of transfer that insecurity if you're not doing the inner work at the same time.
100%. Oh my God, I have so many examples now that you gave your examples. So that was great, Melissa. But I'll say a couple things, because I work with clients and money every day as a financial advisor. And so I love my job. I get to talk about money and emotions all day long. We don't talk enough about money, which is a big part of the problem. But it's so funny. People start to save and you start to do the financial responsible thing, and you see your 401k growing or your brokerage account or your emergency fund. But then there's two things that happen. People hate to see money come out, right? So even though we save for an emergency fund, if you have to use it for something, no one likes it. And then two, they start to get attached to their accounts growing, that when they need it, they're like, I want to retire. I want to go on this trip. I want to do the thing that I was saving for. It doesn't feel good. So to your point, if we're not practicing the internal work of trusting that we are in a currency, we're in a flow, we attach to money in one direction and we stress in the other direction. And we're like, whoa, A, why does that feel off? B, why does it have so much power over how I feel about myself in my life? And then where is the ability to actually experience the flow of life, the flow of wealth, right? And so I see it all the time. We can practice what we think are good financial hygiene and muscles. And then it's like being in a relationship, but we like it only one way. And we all know that doesn't work, right? Because we start caging in our partners. Are like, well, you only like me when I'm happy. You only like me when I'm up. And you're like, no, a real relationship is being with each other through the ups and the downs and all the turns. And so I see it all the time.
I love how in your book you compare money to a spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I just got chills. I often find, Melissa, that money sitting on my shoulder, just like talking to me, be like, oh, did you hear what they said? And it's like, so I treat it as, for me, it's a guide, right? Like some people have animal guides or spirit guides or their own practice. And why I say that is because for a couple reasons. One, money is a huge mirror, right? It's a huge mirror into our relationship styles. And so in the book, I give you some practical examples on how to sit down and have a conversation with money to see what's really at the root of your relationship with it and what's it trying to mirror back in terms of how you are in relationship. Are you avoidant? Are you obsessive? Are you insecure? Insecure attachment, secure attachment. It helps you just see that. So it's a guide and a mirror. But I think simultaneously, Melissa, when we start to experience wealth and recognize the ways in which it can help us create moments of meaning or feel wasteful consumption that we all know what that feels like when you're like, oops, that didn't quite feel right. That's okay, but I don't want to continue that pattern. It can be a guide to helping us understand what our purpose is, what we came here to do, what feels in alignment with our values. The way we are in relationship and use it just gives us so much information every day. So I treat it as a guide. I treat it like a family member. I literally have framed pictures of money around my house and I say hello. And I interact with it daily because I have learned to give it that level of respect in my life.
You talk about the indigenous women in Oaxaca. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, Oaxaca. You did.
Great. Perfect. I love that. They showed you a completely different take on wealth.
Yeah.
What hit home for you about their way of seeing abundance?
I get chills when you ask that because it was a way of being. Like, I really want to emphasize it was a way of being. And even in answering your question, I see myself slow down, right? I'm an animated person, but when I think of just how they were in the world, there was a trust in community, right? So their bonds were stronger. And so it was this feeling of, if I didn't have enough, I had a community to lean on, right? And even if our community didn't have enough, we were going to figure it out. There was a trust in nature. There was a very aligned relationship with nature, respecting what resources they were using, what they were taking, what they were giving back. There was reverence. So wealth was being in relationship with their world and their own spirituality and cosmology. It was more of an exchange and less taking, right? Less hoarding, less it's mine. It's more, it's collective. So getting the opportunity to live with them for 2 years was magical. And it hit me like a ton of bricks where I'm like, my work isn't here. I go to Latin America to kind of renew and restore and recharge. But I was like, my work is back in the States. And I, from then, started asking the question, why is it that we have so much and yet we still feel poor?
And that reminds me of something else you say, this idea of embodied wealth, because it's not just another buzzword. It's about what it actually feels like in our bodies when we're experiencing true wealth.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to get there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You ask great questions, Melissa. I so appreciate it. And because I can feel you also taking the nuggets and digesting them. And I think you're giving a great example of, so embodying wealth is taking the time to pay attention to what gives you a sense of satiation. And satiation is the key word. It's different than gratitude, right? Gratitude's a really important practice too. Satiation is slightly different because it's an experience of feeling fulfilled, right? We know what it's like to have eaten a meal that just hit the spot, right? I didn't overeat. I didn't undereat. I don't feel gross because I consumed this thing. You got a meal and it hit the spot. And it could be a combination of the ingredients, the conversations you had, the setting, but you walk away and you're like, wow, that was awesome. So those are moments of satiation that if we take enough time to digest and integrate, or take enough time to digest and release the ones that aren't satiated, we start to build these moments of meaning that compound, just like interest does, right? We know what savings, what compounding, the power of compounding interest does in our savings accounts. When we start to do that with finding out what satiates us, we start to build an experience of wealth that has a deeper foundation in knowing that we are enough, we have enough, and we can connect to that power, that well of enough.
I was just talking to a friend who's been trying to hire someone for 3 months. 3 months! She's been posting on random job boards, scrolling through resumes that make no sense, getting ghosted by candidates. It's a mess. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the very top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it just makes hiring so fast because you're not wasting time on platforms where nobody's actually looking. Your job gets in front of real candidates who are actively searching. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. I'm reminded of 1 year in business. It was the year that I felt like I made it. I tripled my income. I was looking back at like my first goal journal when I first started Mind Love, and how it would just feel so good to make it to this number, and it was far past that. And in that period of time where I first made a lot more money than I was used to, I ended up being like, well, I can't lose this. And I got really obsessed with the idea of not losing it. And so I started looking for like specific coaches that could help me with this and that. And I invested a lot in it. And I felt like I was making this really good decision. And then through a couple of coaching relationships, I've had some really amazing coaches and I've had some not so amazing coaches, and that just had big promises that we didn't even sort of inch toward the relationship. I'm like, where was this? I don't know. Not the point. But I remember looking back, and I know one of the things you talk about is if money is a spiritual teacher, it's teaching us lessons. It's bringing us to the things that we want to know. And when I looked back, I could see how much of the money that I made I had wasted on this idea that somebody else was going to almost come and save me. Yeah. And what I found out, it wasn't just that they were bad coaches. It was that I already knew so much of the information. I didn't need those coaches at all. I'm like, oh my God, this is like level 1 to my level 10 that I'm already at. Right. Like, why did I think I needed this? And it was like a come to Jesus moment of like, oh man, like all this stuff you're teaching, this was like your moment of embodying it, your moment of being like, I'm constantly telling people not to reach outside of themselves for the answers. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah. So it was just this moment of like money as a mirror and taking me through the trenches of exactly what I teach.
Yeah, that's such a great example, because ultimately, Melissa, it's like we can throw money at the situation, right? And so what I'm hearing you said is like, you kind of you weren't necessarily using those words, but throwing money at wanting to keep money. And money's like, check that out. She's using me to keep me. Like and literally, personify money. That's what I love about the practice conversations with money. Sit down and have a conversation, and it'll crack you up when money starts to say like, oh, check you out. Would you have done that? Right? Does that sound like the right thing? Spend a lot of me to keep me? Like, what's missing there? Whereas, right, when you start practicing a conversation with money, which is freaking free, grab a journal, hopefully one that you have, and you start having a conversation. And what's really important, it's not you talking to money, right? We do that we actually don't do it enough, but it's not you talking to money. It's you having a dialogue where you say what you need to say. Like in this case, you know what, money, I'm so proud of myself. I've hit my goals. Amazing. First, kudos on your back. Now I want to keep you. What do I do? Right. And so you switch roles, and you're actually money talking back to Melissa. And money could have, I'm not your money, but it could have said, okay, Melissa, let's get clear. What are your questions? And you'd be like, well, money, here are my questions. And then money could have said, okay, Melissa, let's choose one. Right. And is it something you can research? Do you know someone in your life who could teach you about it? And you start to get really clear about a plan that's strategic to you. And it doesn't mean that you wouldn't have hired someone in that process, but we're more intentional and kind of clear around what that next step is, right? And because what I tell people is that it's not that I'm trying to get myself out of a job. I'm a financial advisor for a lot of my clients, but I still can't be in between you and your relationship to money, or anyone's relationship to money. It's kind of like having your therapist live with you 24 hours. That's not a healthy relationship, right? They can help you, but you don't want them all the time in your house. And so, but we don't see it that way. We don't recognize that it's a relationship that you have direct and free access to at all times.
There was a podcast documentary about that. Some therapist who kept scamming his clients ended up living with an elderly man, getting him.
Oh my God.
It was a whole thing. And no, it was not healthy. So
exactly. Yeah. And we give our power away. Right. And I know what that feels like. I know when I go to the doctor and they start talking to me in medicalese, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Right. Translate. And I know in my industry, we give our power away. Things sound complicated and some things are. But I tell everyone, right, I can summarize the financial system on one piece of paper, start with one bucket or whatever it is that you need to organize, income, savings, investing, and get clear on that one entry point. It doesn't have to be overly complicated.
I get that a lot of people might think, okay, I can't imagine myself having a conversation with money, but I highly encourage this because well, I don't mean to underestimate my audience. They're actually probably thinking, no, that sounds totally doable, Melissa. But it reminds me of something that I've learned over the years that's changed my life. The first time I read it was, I believe it was in Think and Grow Rich, where he talks about having your... He kind of originated the idea of a mastermind. I forgot what he called it, the circle of something. But he basically talked about he would have his like circle of advisors, and they were imaginary. There were people that existed before, some of them dead. But I've understood the power of like the more that you actually understand a person. Yeah. One great thing about relationships, or even reading deeply about somebody that you admire, because then you can start to think like, what would Elon Musk do in this situation? What would this person do in this situation? You know, and you can almost hear their voice because you've studied them. And that same thing can happen with money if you just sort of clear your channel. Yeah. It might sound crazy, but just try it. You don't need, and what we do is we think, well, I know I'm not going to know the answers because I already am confused about this. And it's like, if we're always leaving all of our issues on the surface level of our minds, that's one of the powerful things about just writing stuff down sometimes. When you see it written down, you're like, oh, that's much simpler than my head was making it seem. But the same thing with silence. If you just sit there and you're like, okay, I have no idea what this money is going to say, but and this sounds really silly, and I don't even know if I feel sane. But you just sit there and you ask the question, and then like meditate almost, or like focus on the energy of money and let it come. You're probably going to get more answers than you would have thought you would have.
Oh my God, 100%. And so I'm going to say a couple things here, because first of all, I want to normalize everyone has resistance, right? Like, so you're not crazy, Melissa. Everyone has resistance, even though you could 100% believe it works. The second thing I would say is that if you feel resistance to like, is money even real? Can money talk to me? Talk to the part of you that deals with bills, or the part of you that goes shopping. Grab your favorite shoes and be like, this is my shopping shoes. This is my checkbook. It's the part of you that is in relationship with money. Talk to that part. So much like you talk to your inner child, you can do parts work as well if that makes it easier. Because there is the part of you that is more in financially charged. And so they may have an opinion as well. So you can break it up in different ways to make it easier. And then the last thing I would say is that, it's helpful. I disclosed my first relationship to my first conversation with money in my book. And I did that on purpose because it was like a smack in my face, right? I was like, oh my gosh. And it kind of goes to your first question, Melissa, of like, what were one of those pivotal moments? And I remember I had just graduated from my grad school and I wanted to start my private practice. No one had taught me how to be an entrepreneur. My parents were always W-2. And so they just kind of earned their money a certain way. And there's a different way of earning it. No one had taught me that. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't make ends meet. I could see that credit card similar to you that was kind of ranking up. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? I've been super successful in other areas in my life and I'm doing it wrong. So I go to this last workshop before I graduated. It was on how to build a private practice. And Michael Klein was the instructor, and he taught us this tool, how to have a conversation with money. It's a Gestalt chair exercise. We do it in therapy when we talk to people who aren't in the room that we have to resolve things with. And I had the conversation with money, Melissa, and I was so angry at money. I'm like, where are you? Why aren't you showing up more? Right? I just want to hold on to you. And money's response was like, whoa, chill out, Elizabeth. You are holding on way too tight. You put too much pressure on me to figure this out, take responsibility that you don't know how to be an entrepreneur, and that is okay. Start there. Learn how to have a business, learn how to charge fees, learn how to market to clients, but learn what you don't know. Stop smothering me, because in reality, I don't want to come in when you're smothering me. And I was like, whoa, you kind of sound like an old boyfriend. I get that. Okay, there's a relational pattern here that I have to take ownership with. And it was like a bucket of cold water just on. I felt such relief. I'm like, okay, money, let's start over. Let's be friends. Help me figure this out. And let's take one step forward together. And ever since then, that was in my early 20s, I'm like, okay, money, I don't have to have all the answers. Even in this industry, I don't have to have all the answers, but we can work together to take the next step forward. And it just radically changed my relationship to money.
Most people that I've spoken to, including my former self, that had a really difficult time managing their money. The hardest part is that getting started part, because they're afraid of what they're going to see. And they know, like, okay, well, I don't know if I can afford my lifestyle. So this is going to show me all the places that I need to cut back. And I'm not quite ready for that. Or I'm like, they're almost ashamed. And then hiring somebody in is like, wait, no, I at least need to clean this up a little bit before I hire somebody in. What would you say to those people about just sort of inching their way in, or at least being brave enough to see the overview of their situation?
So I would have them hold their hands out. In one hand, right, you can hold the feelings of shame, guilt, discomfort, all the stuff of not looking, right? And in the other hand, you can hold the possibility of choice. And that's really what they're holding in their two hands. They can continue all the unprocessed emotions that come up when you don't look, when you don't know, right? Or you can hold the possibility of choice. Because when you start to look at what comes in and what goes out, at what you earn, what you spend, some things may come in, some things may be taken out, some things may get added, right? But there's choice in that element of being able to design your life with the resources that you do have that are coming in. Even if we have to adjust things, right? You get to design your life instead of living by default. So bring it back to that. Do you want to live by choice, or do you want to live by unprocessed emotions? And then, in my world, I'm like, well, that's duh. I'm going to live by choice. And when I start to look at the choice, right, and I'm looking at my budget or my spreadsheet, I actually like spending plan. No one likes a budget. It's a diet. But a spending plan, right, allows me to take the money I have and the resources. And there might be categories that have adjustments, but it doesn't mean you can't satisfy those categories. And that's really important, right? And that's where the work around human needs and the wealth mandala is. The human needs don't go away, right? Our need for connection and touch and leisure and physical stability and safety and physical health, all these things, we need to fulfill them, but we may adjust our strategies. Maybe sometimes we do use money for some of those strategies. Maybe sometimes we get creative and find non-monetary, non-financial ways to meet the need. But again, that's on us. So it actually becomes so fun and creative and a game to be like, how do I bring design to my life? And then money is a resource that I use to fill it. And I get to choose. How do I do that? I don't know if that was helpful.
Oh, it 100% is helpful.
Okay.
I am just thinking about how in so many areas of life, I mean, the listeners of this podcast already know this. We're at the point where we're beyond toxic positivity. We know that we address emotions, Yeah. At least I hope so. Unless you're new here, you'll get to it. But, overriding our emotions, acting like things aren't happening isn't going to serve us. It lives in our body. Yet somehow, when it comes to money, it's like we think totally different rules apply. And we might have these really negative feelings towards money that might be things that we've inherited, that we've developed over time because of our current habits that we're afraid to let go of, that we're afraid to really see. But even in that area, if you are not allowing yourself to look at it, then you're probably also not allowing yourself to address those emotions, which are then living in your body, getting stuck there, and then creating more negative behaviors that just keep the cycle going.
100%. Right. And so, I mean, you're so spot on, Melissa. This is like the frontier that we haven't necessarily gotten to because it's so scary. And I think the reality is that we don't talk enough about it. Right. We don't like to talk about money. If we make a lot, if we don't make a lot, if we're in debt, or we're giving anonymously, there's just like, we don't talk enough about it. And so part of why I wrote the book, and I didn't write a financial how-to kind of from an investment standpoint. I wrote a book that gives you practical tools and exercises so that you can start to loosen the soil and get clear around where are some of those roots, right? Where are those emotions coming from? So yes, you can do a conversation with money, but in this case, sit down and write your money story, right? Write your story, write your ancestral story. What are some of the patterns you see? And what I like to tell people is write the story. There's actually a free resource on my website that people can go to write their story and step away from it. Like step away from it for 24 hours, come back, reread it as if it were your best friend's story, right? Read it from fresh eyes to be like, okay, this is someone who loves me and trusts me, and they just told me some really vulnerable things. If I'm their best friend, right? What patterns can I help them see? What areas do they continue to get stuck? What muscles actually are strong that they can strengthen, right? And you can become your own kind of like social and cultural anthropologist to kind of piece together and connect the dots around what has shaped you around money and make, again, choices. What do I want to keep as behaviors that I really like and I want to pass on to the next generation, right? You're a mother, you know this. We teach our kids around money. Either we're even when we're not talking about it, our behaviors model certain behaviors. So you get to bring the choice of what do I want to take with me, and what do I say? Thank you, ancestors. This got you this far, but this stops here. I'm not passing on scarcity. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. I made a conscious decision. I am not going to pass scarcity on to my child as an experience.
I love that little bit of distance between this because so often I think we want the transformation now, immediately.
Yeah.
And so if people are anything like me, a lot of times it's like, okay, well, how many of these activities can I do? Okay, am I abundant yet? If you do it that way, then you're still too in it and you just poured your heart out, and you might be feeling a certain type of way. You might be writing things that you didn't even really want to look at. And so if you look at it right then, you're going to bring in those same feelings. But if you take that step away, and it's sometimes as simple as just that intention. Okay, this is my best friend. This is the girl that got me here. I might not agree. I might not feel good about where I am in certain aspects, but this is something that I've had to deeply do with my former self, with all the mistakes I had made. For a long time, I was looking at her like I had moved beyond it, and I was proud of myself, but I was proud of this version of me, and I kept saying, oh, but that girl was a mess, but that girl was a mess. And I'm like, excuse me, ma'am. She's the one who walked you straight over here. She's the one who made those first decisions before, when she was living in the shit. You're not in the shit anymore. Of course it's easier, and she cleaned her shoes and stepped out of it.
Yeah. And so one of the metaphors that I use, so I love that. I love that you're like, totally showing appreciation for the part of you that got you here. And maybe that part of you isn't what's going to get you there, but oh my goodness, she freaking got you here. And so like such kudos and hats off to all of us that are often doing our best. And yet we're wanting to transform. And so, so part of it is you do have to resolve the past. And if we don't resolve the past, it's not, in one of your previous podcasts, we don't have to get stuck in the why behind it, but we do have to process the feelings. And those are two different things, right? If you're like, I feel money angst, or I feel money shame, or I feel money guilt, we have to go to what that energy is and what that emotion is. And if you want to figure out the why, great, but also just start to digest it. And sometimes it can be as simple as like getting down and touching the earth and saying, earth, this no longer serves me. Like, I don't want to feel guilty. I'm not quite sure how to solve it through my mind, but I'm committed to moving the guilt through. And so again, those small intentions of I'm committed to moving the guilt through and starting to track, right? Like, what are the muscles that we're building? And it's really important. There is no magic pill. right? Even a windfall or an inheritance isn't a magic pill, because then we have to like deal with a whole other array of things, right? Like there's so what I tell people is it's about going to the money gym and building the muscles in a sustainable way. Right. And that's why a lot of the practices, and again, I'm sure there's so many out there, but the ones that I offer my readers is sit down and write your money story, or commit to 30 days of writing a money memory. Don't dissect it. Just write the memory. 30 days later, turn around, read them all. What are the patterns? Or for 30 days, keep a satiation journal. 3 things every day that fulfilled you. Let yourself be surprised, however small, however big. Again, don't dissect it. Write them for 30 days, turn it back, use your mind, and then look for patterns. But this is a great example of how your heart, body, and mind can work together in a better way to gain information that's stored in your body, to gain information that's in your heart emotions, and then to have your mind help them connect the dots. And that's how we start to embody wealth, right? It's a full centered experience. And then I know this one starts to sound really cheesy, but I tell my clients all the time, pause, right? When you described, Melissa, the part of you that got you there, that maybe didn't do it perfectly, but worked really hard, pause and just swallow a sense of gratitude and satiation for that part of you. And once you start to swallow, it's a physical reminder that goes all the way deep into your body, into your cells, that part of you has value and worth. And your self-worth comes from recognizing just who you are as a human, how far you've come, your ability to transform, everything you've learned. And we build that from the inside out.
I think it's so beautiful to really, really make that your life's work, because the truth is I know people that are multimillionaires that still don't feel worthy.
Huh?
And
Yeah.
so if you're not bridging that gap
Yeah.
between of what the true meaning of worth and abundance is, and
Yeah.
changing it from just the financial, then no amount of money is going to solve this for you. And you're going to keep reaching outside of yourself,
Yeah.
probably making yourself miserable because you don't know how to fill yourself up. But you make this brilliant distinction between feeling full versus feeling satisfied.
Yeah.
Your experience working with people, where do we usually mix these up?
So I'm gonna actually use a client case to make this point, to connect it to what you were saying before and to kind of speak to where we mix this up. So as a financial advisor, right, a lot of times people are coming to us to want to create these portfolios where we have enough money, we don't have to think about it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear that, and I hear that and people say that to me. And I tell them, my job is only half done once we create the financial plan. The other side of my work is having them really get clear on their wealth mandala. And what I mean by that, the wealth mandala is breaking wealth or redefining wealth to be more holistically, where financial stability, AKA all the things that we use money for, is only one sliver of that pie, right? And so there's financial stability, there's physical health, there's safety, there's touch, leisure, connection, belonging, understanding. I mean, there's 12 different needs. And when people come to me and say, well, I feel full, right? I have the portfolio I need. I've saved enough, multi-millions, right? I have enough to live off of, even though they never really say that, but they're like, I think I've saved enough. And then we have to work through those numbers. And then I say, great, maybe your financial stability piece of the pie is filled. Let's fill that up. Let's color it in. Let's recognize it for what it is. Awesome. Now tell me, how are you feeling in these other areas? And Melissa, there hasn't been an exercise that I do with a client. They don't come back. They're like, oh, wow, guess what? In this area, I'm at a 2 out of 10. In this area, I'm a 1 out of 10. In this area, I'm a 5 out of 10. And we start recognizing that there's other areas of poverty, right? That's really fueling and feeding the feeling of not enoughness. And once we start to discover that, then we can be like, oh, wow, my job isn't done, right? Our job is to recognize how do we channel resources, and again, monetary and non-monetary resources to satisfy and not just fill. And so that's the distinction. How do we satisfy you so that you feel a moment of meaning, where you feel a connection, where you feel purpose in whatever you chose, whatever strategy you chose to satisfy that need, versus filling it up to just feel like it's superficially met. And that's the distinction. And I think, again, go to your body. Most of us eat every day, right? I mean, you could be fasting, but most of us eat every day. You know the difference in your body between when you're eating to feel satiated and fulfilled, when you're eating on the go and you're like, oops, I got to pick up the fast food because I just don't have time, or when you're overeating out of anxiety. We all know what that feels like.
That reminds me of digesting. You also said something that I've been just holding with me since I read this part in your book, but you talked about digesting meaningful experiences, not just collecting them. It reminds me of an episode I did way back, episode 333, with this woman, Bridget Hilton, and she calls herself the experiential billionaire, and it's all about really getting the most out of experiences so you don't die with regrets. And it's so true, because if we're just constantly trying to accumulate wealth, and then like a lot of the times I know a lot of people who are in this like money grab kind of energy. Yeah. And then they're like, well, I got to travel. I got to do these things like rich people do or whatever. And then they're going out there and doing it and they never really feel it. And so it's, they don't even feel their own wealth. And that's true whether you have a lot of money or not. There are people who have hardly any money that would be what we would consider in poverty, but they feel wealthy, they feel rich. And so what is your go-to practice for really absorbing the richness of a moment? And so what is your go-to practice for really absorbing the richness of a moment?
Yeah. And, you know, it's, so whenever I break down practices, I do it in all three centers, right? Because we're not just the heart, the mind, the body, right? And so for the body, right, to digest a moment, I literally tell people swallow whatever that moment was. For me, I love moments of meaning where I feel joy. I'm a super joyful person. And when I recognize, I'm like, oh my God, that was a moment of joy, I will stop. I will close my eyes, I will swallow, and I literally let that joy go all the way down to my toes. And I tell my body, compound that, right? Because here's the reality, Melissa. Once your body starts to experience something, now you have an energetic reference to make your way back to when you're no longer there. I mean, that's why meditation works, right? You start to have an energetic reference of what it feels like to be on the pillow in a calm state. So I do that by digesting what brings me meaning. For me, it's joy, right? And that doesn't have to be for everyone. So start to recognize how would you describe your moment of meaning? Literally swallow when you have them. So that's my body practice. My heart practice, I'm super communal. I love friendships and relationships. I love talking about a great party after it happened because you get to relive it again, right? And so sharing pictures, telling stories, taking the time, because I'd be like, oh, I'm too busy to do that. And you just recently had a podcast on relationships, right? And how we have to take the time to build these relationships at a deep level. And so that's kind of the heart practice of feeling satisfied by everything we spend time and money doing. Like, make sure you take time to feel the feels around it. And then with my mind, right? It's for me, it's more the practices. Like, I love that the new year time, because in the new year, I will always take time to look back. Like, I always have a word for the year. So I'll look back and be like, how did my moments of meaning support my word for the year? What's starting to bubble up for the word for next year? And then the goals are connected to the word and the essence that I'm wanting to experience. And they're connected to what came through my body, what came through my heart. They're not just abstract, right? And so that's how I take time. And I mean, there's so many examples, but those are just 3 examples of how I'm taking the time to digest life. And I'm a fast moving person. I've had to practice slowing down. And I had a teacher once tell me, it only takes an instant, right? I'm not one to meditate for an hour, but I can stop and swallow for 30 seconds. And I know I'm digesting a moment of meaning.
It's so interesting. We have similar practices with that body one. It's one that I am constantly teaching people that so often we're trying to build these new habits. We're trying to come back to something. And whether it's something like joy or your meditation practice, if you're just sitting there and allowing what goes through your mind to be like the nerves before doing it, or, oh, I got to do this thing, and then you do it, and then you just kind of get up and go, you aren't going to be instilling the right feelings within you to want to come back to it, because your whole memory of it's going to be that whole beforehand time of dreading it, resisting it, whatever it is. And so for meditation, for example, I'm like, right afterwards, sit there and notice, how do you feel right after you do something else that you really want, going on a run, doing your budget, whatever it is, sit there and be like, this feels amazing. And then amplify it. But I love the word compound. For some reason, I probably am going to end up switching my whole process to compound versus amplify. Sometimes it's the little thing, but it's just like, when I amplify this, and you start to realize that you even have, we do it all the time with misery. You know, when we're feeling good, we tell the story over and over again till we feel like absolute shit. And so if you could do that same thing with joy intentionally, with abundance, with whatever it is that you're moving towards, and you make the conscious decision to amplify or compound, and then sit in it and really, and then give yourself gratitude for even amplifying it, all those things, dwell on that instead of all the other things we dwell on.
And oh my goodness, Melissa, can we share more with each other that we love our lives? Yes. Right? Talk about the next taboo, even past money. We don't say that enough. Like, I love my life. I say it to my husband at least once a week, and he laughs now with me. At first he's like, okay. And now, and funny enough, he's found his way. His isn't so much joy. He's much more of a spiritual practitioner, and he feels bliss. I'm like, kind of same thing, but whatever. You'll have your bliss, I'll have my joy. But to share with each other that we love our lives, oh my God, there's so much power in that.
I love how that's a taboo, or I dislike how that's a taboo, but it's just so funny because that's true. It's like, we have no problem trauma bonding or like bonding over how hard it is to be a mom or whatever. It's like, normalize being like, I freaking love my kids. Oh my God. Even in the chaos, it's so great. Or I love my life. I love my messy living room. I love, like, why? Yes. Normalize that, because we take on the collective, and what we're seeing from others paints our worldview, and it affects what we believe is possible for ourselves. And so in sharing, whereas one person might be like, well, I don't want to brag, Sonia's having a difficult day today, or whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, does it help your friend Sonia if she thinks everyone's having a bad day? You don't need to go like brag about it in front of her when she's having a hard time, but we don't need to hide the fact that we're happy. And we're actually giving permission to other people to celebrate their lives, to celebrate joy. And so it's a gift to be present and to really acknowledge the goodness of your own life.
Right. And don't hoard it. Right? Like, why do we hoard the good things and we're sharing like the trauma bonding, like you're saying? It's like, no, that is a gift you can give every day. We can be sensitive. If someone's going through a really hard time, maybe they can't receive the gift, but not everyone is going through a hard time. Give the gift of inspiration that things can go well, that marriages do work. I love my marriage, and I make a point of saying that out loud because not enough people do. And it definitely has had its ups and downs, and I've learned a ton, and I'm not naive, but I love being married and I love my partnership. And I'm happy to share about that because I think it inspires my daughter, who's 14, that healthy relationships are possible. And she's seen us go through different ups and downs. So the more we can say, I love my life where I'm at, again, we get to experience that power of I have enough, I am enough, I'm connected to my well of enough.
Marriage is actually the first time I really felt like I felt a sense of security. So I love marriage too.
Wait. And can you, I love that you say that because this is like my 2 second, like sometimes it cracks me up that in our culture, we call investments securities, right? We have the Security Exchange Commission. Investments are securities. And it's not that it doesn't give us some sense of security, but I love how you just said that marriage gave you your first experience of security, right? And when we start to broaden how we experience security, again, we demystify it and we release a little bit the whole that money gives us security.
This reminds me that I know that there's people out there that haven't had a lot of joy around money. It's always been a struggle. It's what they remember from their childhood. It's what they're still experiencing. And so when they're hearing us say like, yeah, think about joy and money and all these things, it's like, okay, maybe I haven't reached that level yet. But you talk about looking at money as neutral, like electricity. And so for my listeners who've been burned by money, how do they begin to shift that charged relationship?
So a couple things come to mind when you ask that question. So one, again, I close my eyes and it's a practice of unconditional acceptance, which I speak about in the book as well. Like, so really just extending unconditional acceptance to you and to money for trying your best to get where you are. Second step is to commit to the possibility of there being a blank slate. You can start over, right? And then 3, getting clear, what are the parts of you that potentially feel less joy and how do we start to bring a sense of joy? So for example, right, a lot of times with clients, I'll have them start literally a little play jar and it's a jar where like $1 goes in. I mean, we're talking kid allowance money, but every week they have to go spend it. And they can spend it on what their inner child, what their little kid would have done. So you go to a toy store and you buy stickers, right? You treat yourself to an ice cream. And then you start to realize actually Wendy's doesn't taste the same as an adult as it did as a kid, right? And so you may not go and spend it on the same ways, but start to be like in an amount that doesn't take away from some of the other things that you're trying to do, right? If you need to pay the utility bill, if you need like $5 a week, could potentially be an amount that you could just bring play back into. And if you're like, okay, I'm going to use that to buy a coffee, go buy a coffee and see if you can talk to someone, right? Whatever brings you that sense of joy. And so it's bringing small amounts to the table, being super clear where you don't feel joy in your life and how can money become a friend to help you bring joy there in whatever amount it is. It's not the amount. It's more about bringing the energetics and the intention of like, actually, there's an area in my life that I don't feel joy in and I want to ask for help. I'm going to make my list of potential ways that maybe I could bring joy and money. You're going to be one of my board members or friends or guides that potentially bring a little joy here. Much like you would potentially reach out to your best friend. But we have to make the intention to want to start to bring joy to that area. And what's really important, Melissa, we can't scapegoat money. We can't say, you know what, can't experience joy until I have money. Money is on my shoulder being like, WTF, why am I being blamed for you not experience joy? We can experience joy without spending $1 of me. We got to figure that out.
Right. And one thing that was a huge game changer for me was just realizing that money is an energy. We make it like this God in our lives when really it's just a tool. It's a tool of exchange. and we just build it up to where it's just this thing that's untouchable. And why?
Well, you know, what just occurred to me, I have never said this out loud, so I'm going to say it and see where it goes. It's like, it reminds me like love, right? Like love is an energy. And sometimes love creates the worst hurt and pain that we've ever, gone through. Like heartbreak sucks. And yet we hold love on a pedestal, right? And so it's a similar, and yet we keep coming back to it. There's not as much taboo around love, even though it hurts us like nothing else that we've known, right? And so it's the same thing with money, is that even though money can help us feel things, good and bad, we don't hold it in the same esteem or the same kind of energy as love. Why?
Yeah, it's like we've been tainted, a lot of people have been tainted with this idea that money is the root of all evil, or that, then they feel shame for charging what they're worth. And it's just this vicious cycle. And then another thing that comes up, I found that people get sort of trapped into. We've talked about the people that have always had that negative relationship with money, or it's always just felt unreachable, whatever their situation is. But then there's the people that are like, okay, I've experienced this, and now I'm making twice that or 3 times that, but they're still living paycheck to paycheck because their standard of living just goes up, and it still seems like it's untouchable, even though they can keep making more.
Yeah. And so this is what I would tell people, is that can we commit as a society to strengthen a healthy relationship to money, independent of how much we have? Because what you're describing, Melissa, is so accurate. We all have someone in our lives that has a ton of money, much more than we do, and doesn't feel happy. So why is that our model of success? Versus if there's more people, ourselves included, committed to a healthy relationship to money, it's independent of how much we have. We can start to tilt the scale, right? Much like love, there's enough people in my life who have a healthy relationship to love that when the pessimists come in and say, I don't believe in relationships, I don't believe in marriage, I can kind of situate them. They're not the dominant voice. And if we start to do that in money, where there's enough people who have a healthy relationship with money, a direct relationship with money, they know what enough is, then we can start to shift the scales towards, oh, that's what's important. A healthy relationship with money versus having having money. It's the healthy relationships that we can start to shift our focus to.
Well, we've covered so many amazing and even actionable things in this episode. But if we were going to leave listeners with one thing to apply to their lives, whether it's a thought or an action, something approachable, what would that be?
It's a great question, Melissa. And I always come back to, this is one of my favorite practices. Put talking to money aside. That can be a little out there, but grab a journal, and for the next 30 days, start right now, page 1, day 1, for 30 days, keep a satiation log and write down 3 things that fulfilled you today. Do it for 30 days. After the month is over, look back. What are the patterns, right? And if you're drawing a blank, that is interesting as well. Why is there not things in your life that satiate and fulfill you? That's great information. But the satiation log and journal is so simple, so easy. It is free. You can start right now and just start to gather that information about you, that only you know what truly satisfies and satiates you. I would say start there.
Ooh, this sounds like the exact spice I need for my gratitude practice, because you know what? Gratitude practice, so powerful. I still do it. Lately, I've been doing it right when my meditation is over. I sit there and just give gratitude before I get out. Awesome. But what I love about this idea of a satiation log is it's like the bridge between the gratitude and the feeling in your body. Yep. It's not just because sometimes for people who've been doing gratitude a long time, it's like, well, I'm on day 7,000. How am I supposed to keep thinking of things? And so it almost feels like you're just checking the box of doing your gratitude. But when you're like, no, what satisfied me?
Yeah.
Clearly it's things that you're grateful for, but it really forces you to bring that into your body, which is where the transformation occurs. So thank you so much for not just everything you've brought to this interview, but to the world. This is such a powerful book for those that are really looking to transform their relationships with money. So for listeners that are interested in connecting with you or finding your book, where's the best place to reach out?
Thanks, Melissa. I have a website. So website is basically my name, elizabethhusserl.com. You can order your book through there. It will take you to wherever you buy books. I have free resources from the books on the website. So you can reach me through that website or my firm website, peak360wealth.com. So both are great areas. I also have an Instagram handle, Elizabeth Husserl. So I do posts, I do little snippets and insights there as well.
All of the links from this episode will be at mindlove.com/378. Your challenge for this week is to start your own satiation log. So take just a few minutes every evening to write down 3 things that truly fulfilled you that day. And not just things you're grateful for, but moments where you felt genuinely satisfied and complete. And notice how this practice starts to shift your attention from what's missing to what's actually nourishing you. I am so excited about this challenge. I think it's going to change my life. It's like going to be the new novelty that I need for my little practices, because I've been doing gratitude for a really long time. But sometimes, if you've been doing gratitude for a while, you start to feel like you're just doing whatever you can to just fill out the numbers. You guys know what I'm talking about. So something about switching this around to a satiation log feels really fresh, but also like it's gonna hit a different part of me, maybe even activate a different part of my brain. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. You can also reach out to me at mindlovemelissa on Instagram if you want to share how it's changing things for you. I've been thinking about something recently, and I find it really interesting that sometimes the more we learn about personal growth, the more overwhelming it feels to actually implement it all. Because let's be real, we have heard thousands of different tips and things to apply to our lives to make whether subtle little shifts or big meaningful changes. But where do we even start? Well, that's what I want to tell you about, because I have spent 7 years dreaming about the thing that I'm about to tell you about. It's called living mind love. It's not about adding more to your plate, but it's about finally having a clear path to implement the things that resonate most deeply with you, to actually craft your life around all of these things that we've been talking about. So if you want in when it launches, join us at mindlove.com/waitlist. mindlove.com/waitlist and be the first to know, because I'm going to have a special founding members price for you. And I promise you, I have made this my most affordable offering so far. So I cannot wait to show you how much value is in this. You can also find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.